What if I told you that some of the most powerful medicines you could possibly use are growing wild right now? In ditches, abandoned lots, maybe even your own backyard. Plants that can heal everything from wounds to chronic pain. Plants proven by science to work. Plants that our grandparents knew by heart. That got people through centuries without hospitals or pharmacies. But here's what most people don't know. Big Pharma has fought for 70 years to keep you from learning their names. And today, that changes. This isn't just a list of forgotten plants. This is your blueprint for a living pharmacy. 20 medicinal plants organized into 5 sections, just like a real pharmacy, but growing in your backyard instead of controlled by corporations. First aid, respiratory, pain management, digestive support, immune defense, and you'll learn exactly who tried to erase them and why they failed. Number 17, used for 2,000 years. Modern research shows it fights antibiotic-resistant bacteria. Number 20, the original aspirin, without the stomach damage. Let's open the archive. Calendula. Calendula officinalis. Medieval soldiers carried it into war, called it the war flower. They swore it healed wounds faster than leaving them alone. They weren't imagining it. Modern clinical trials prove what those warriors knew. Calendula speeds wound healing by encouraging cell multiplication and tissue repair. Contains triterpenes and flavonoids with anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial properties. Published studies show calendula reduces healing time for cuts, scrapes, and burns by up to 30%. So, why don't you hear about this from your doctor? The 1952 FDA ruling restricted herbal health claims without expensive trials. Big Pharma developed Neosporin in 56, synthetic, patentable, controllable. Calendula works, provable. But no patent on a flower means no profit. So it got buried under marketing budgets. But for anyone who wants safe wound care without asking permission, calendula never left. You can infuse dried flowers in oil. You've got something that heals minor wounds faster than leaving them alone, and you made it yourself. Growing, zones 3 through 10, low invasiveness, any garden center or Baker Creek seeds, full sun, direct sow after last frost. Your backyard emergency room, waiting for you to remember it exists. Sea buckthorn, Hippophae rhamnoids. Genghis Khan's armies survived on these orange berries. His horses ate the leaves. His soldiers ate the fruit. Medicine of the steppes. In Tibetan Russia, healers used it for burns, frostbite, rashes that wouldn't heal. Modern dermatology caught up. Sea buckthorn oil contains over 190 bioactive compounds, omega-7 fatty acids rare in plants, vitamins A, C, E in pharmaceutical-grade concentrations. Clinical studies show it speeds skin regeneration and reduces inflammation. If you've got eczema that won't respond to over-the-counter creams, this might work where prescriptions failed. Why isn't this on pharmacy shelves? Same story. Can't patent a berry that's been wild for millions of years. Big Pharma pushed synthetic corticosteroid creams. Stronger, pricier, more side effects. Sea buckthorn got labeled folklore, but anyone with chronic skin issues knows. Sometimes the old ways work when the new ones don't. Oil works internally or topically. Stains orange, fair warning. Growing, zones 3 through 7. Medium invasiveness, spreads by suckers. One green world nursery. Full sun, tolerates poor soil. Medicine of the steppes, still growing, still healing. Comfrey. Symphytum officinale. Medieval Europe called it knit bone, broke a bone, tore a muscle. Healers wrapped it in comfrey poultices, said it knit tissue faster than anything else. They were right about the chemistry. Comfrey contains allantoin that promotes cell proliferation. Your body uses it to build new tissue. Modern research confirms comfrey speeds healing of sprains, bruises, closed fractures when applied topically. German trials showed comfrey gel reduced ankle sprain pain and swelling better than some prescription anti-inflammatories. What happened? 2001. FDA restricted internal use because comfrey contains pyrrolizidine alkaloids that damage your liver if consumed over time. That restriction was scientifically justified. But here's what got buried. External use is safe. Topical comfrey works without the risk, yet the whole plant got painted as dangerous. Most people never learned the difference between drinking comfrey tea, which you shouldn't, and using comfrey salve on a sprained ankle, which is perfectly safe. Pharma filled the gap with synthetics that cost more and work about the same. For sports injuries, sprains, deep bruising, external comfrey is still one of the fastest healers. You just need to use it correctly. Growing, zones 3 through 9. High invasiveness, spreads aggressively through root fragments, contained bed only. Any root piece will sprout. Horizon herbs, part shade to full sun, rich, moist soil. Knit bone, still knitting, just don't drink it. Mullein, Verbascum thapsus. For centuries, people with bronchitis, asthma, or chest coughs turned to mullein. Native Americans smoked the leaves, Europeans brewed tea. Both agreed. It opened airways. Real pharmacology backs it. Mullein contains mucilage and saponins that coat irritated airways and help expel mucus. Anti-inflammatory compounds reduce respiratory tract swelling. Modern herbalists still use it for respiratory infections. Clinical research suggests it works as an expectorant, helping you cough up what needs out instead of trapping it in your lungs. Why did this fall out of common knowledge? Simple economics. Patent medicine companies developed synthetic cough syrups they could trademark and mark up. Mullein grows free on roadsides. If over-the-counter syrups can't touch your cough, mullein tea might be what your grandmother would have handed you. Steep dried leaves, strain well through cheesecloth to remove fine hairs, add honey. Growing. Zones 3 through 9. High invasiveness. Biennial, self-seeds aggressively. One plant makes thousands of seeds. Full sun, poor dry soil. Already growing wild near you. Roadside medicine, still opening airways. First aid section complete. Wounds, skin, tissue. Respiratory emergencies covered. Moving into respiratory. Plants targeting lungs and breathing. Elecampane, Inula helenium. Ancient Greece and Rome used elecampane roots specifically for lung diseases. The Greek physician Dioscorides wrote about it 2,000 years ago. Said it cleared phlegm and strengthened weak lungs. Medieval monasteries grew it in their medicinal gardens. They called it the lung herb. The root contains inulin and essential oils, including allantolactone, compounds that act as natural expectorants and antimicrobials. Modern phytochemistry shows elecampane specifically targets bacteria and fungi in the respiratory system. Research confirms it helps break up stubborn mucus and fights the infections that cause chronic bronchitis. Some herbalists consider it more effective than mullein for deep-seated lung congestion. Why don't doctors prescribe it? Same pattern. Pharmaceutical companies developed synthetic bronchodilators and antibiotics with patent protection. Elecampane became alternative medicine, meaning it got pushed to the margins while prescriptions dominated. But for chronic respiratory issues that keep coming back, Elecampane root decoction might be worth trying when antibiotics stop working. Simmer the chopped dried root for 20 minutes, strain, and drink. Tastes bitter and medicinal, which is usually a good sign. Growing. Zones 3 through 9. Low invasiveness. Dies back in winter. Returns from roots. Strictly medicinal seeds. Full sun to part shade. Moist, rich soil. The lung herb. Still clearing airways after 2 millennia. Thyme. Thymus vulgaris. Ancient Egyptians used thyme in embalming because of its powerful antimicrobial properties. Medieval Europe burned thyme during plagues. Traditional healers knew it killed airborne bacteria. They didn't call it an antiseptic. They just knew it worked. Thyme contains thymol and carvacrol, compounds that modern research confirms kill respiratory bacteria and viruses. The essential oils help relax bronchial muscles and thin mucus. Clinical studies show thyme extract reduces cough frequency and severity in acute bronchitis. If you've got asthma and you're looking for something to help manage inflammation between attacks, thyme tea has documented bronchodilator effects. So why isn't this in every cough medicine? Because thyme grows in every kitchen garden for free. Pharmaceutical companies develop synthetic cough suppressants like dextromethorphan they could patent and sell at pharmacy markup. But thyme never needed defending. It just kept growing. Fresh or dried, steep it strong. The steam alone helps open your airways before you even drink it. Growing. Zones 5 through 9. Low invasiveness. Perennial that spreads slowly into a mat. Any garden center. Full sun, well-drained soil. Drought tolerant once established. Kitchen medicine. Hiding in plain sight. Plantain. Plantago major and lanceolata. Not the banana, the weed in your lawn. Native Americans called it white man's footprint because it followed European settlers everywhere. They learned to use it for wounds and respiratory inflammation. European herbalists had been using it for centuries before that. Plantain leaves contain aucubin and mucilage that soothe irritated mucous membranes throughout your respiratory tract. The compounds reduce inflammation and help your body expel infected mucus. Modern research shows plantain works as both an expectorant and a demulcent, meaning it helps you cough productively while protecting raw throat tissue. Why isn't this common knowledge? Because it's literally a weed. Can't package and sell something growing in every lawn. So pharmaceutical companies marketed synthetic throat lozenges and cough drops instead. Plantain just kept growing. Everywhere. Chew fresh leaves for immediate throat relief, or brew dried leaves into tea for deeper respiratory support. Growing. Zones 3 through 10. You already have it. It's in your lawn right now. No invasiveness rating needed. It's everywhere. Just stop spraying it with herbicides. The weed that followed civilization, still healing for free. Horehound. Marubium vulgar. Ancient Rome used horehound specifically for chronic coughs and tuberculosis. The name comes from Horus, the Egyptian god of healing. For 2,000 years, it was the standard remedy for stubborn respiratory infections. Horehound contains marubian, a compound that thins mucus and stimulates your lungs to expel what's trapped. It's one of the most bitter herbs you'll ever taste, which traditional medicine considered proof of its strength. Modern pharmacology confirms marubian acts as a natural expectorant. Clinical studies show it works for chronic bronchitis when synthetic cough medicines fail. So why did it disappear from medicine cabinets? Mid-20th century. pharmaceutical companies synthesized guaifenesin, a patentable expectorant they could mass produce and market. Horehound became old-fashioned. But old-fashioned sometimes means tested by centuries. Brew the dried leaves strong. Add honey to cut the bitterness. What you get is something that's been clearing lungs since before antibiotics existed. Growing, zones 4 through 9, low invasiveness, perennial that self-seeds moderately, mountain rose herbs or strictly medicinal seeds, full sun, tolerates poor dry soil, drought resistant, ancient standard, still working, respiratory section complete, 5 plants that target everything from clearing mucus to fighting infections, to opening airways, to soothing irritated tissue. Moving into pain management. Plants that reduce inflammation and kill pain at the source. Arnica. Arnica montana. For centuries, mountain climbers and farmers in the European Alps used arnica for one thing: deep tissue pain. Falls, bruises, sprains, muscle tears. They crushed the flowers into salves and applied them to injuries that went deeper than the skin. Arnica contains sesquiterpene lactones, particularly heleniolin, that reduce inflammation at the cellular level. Modern research shows Arnica gel reduces pain and swelling from osteoarthritis and post-surgical bruising as effectively as ibuprofen in some trials. German doctors still prescribe Arnica topically for sports injuries and post-operative recovery. But in the United States, almost nobody knows about it. Here's why. The 1990 FDA classified Arnica as unsafe for internal use because high doses cause toxicity. That classification was medically sound. But what got buried in that ruling was this: topical Arnica is safe and effective. External use doesn't carry the risks. Yet the FDA's warning painted the entire plant as dangerous, and most Americans never learned you could use it safely on your skin. Meanwhile, pharmaceutical companies were happy to sell you prescription NSAIDs with gastric bleeding risks and synthetic pain creams that cost $20 a tube. For anyone dealing with deep bruising, joint pain, or recovery from physical trauma, Arnica gel is still one of the most effective natural pain relievers. You just need to use it correctly. Never on broken skin. Only external. Growing. Zones 5 through 8. Low invasiveness. Challenging to grow. Needs alpine conditions with cool nights and excellent drainage. Most people buy the prepared gel instead. Look for Arnica montana, not cheaper substitutes. Mountain medicine, still reducing pain after 1,000 years. Devil's Claw, Harpagophytum procumbens, from the Kalahari Desert in southern Africa. The San people and Khoi tribes used devil's claw root for arthritis, joint pain, and inflammatory conditions long before European colonizers arrived. They knew it worked when nothing else would touch the pain. Devil's Claw contains iridoid glycosides, particularly harpagoside, that inhibit inflammatory pathways in your joints. European clinical trials show it reduces osteoarthritis pain as effectively as prescription anti-inflammatories, but without the stomach damage. Multiple studies confirm Devil's Claw works for chronic lower back pain and degenerative joint disease. If you've got arthritis that makes mornings unbearable, this is worth knowing about. So why don't American doctors recommend it? Because it grows in Africa. Can't be patented. Can't be easily controlled by pharmaceutical supply chains. So Big Pharma pushed COX-2 inhibitors and prescription NSAIDs instead. Drugs that came with cardiovascular risks and cost hundreds per month. Devil's Claw got labeled alternative and marginalized, even though the clinical evidence is solid. For chronic inflammatory pain that conventional medicine treats with drugs that wreck your stomach or your heart, Devil's Claw offers a legitimate option backed by decades of European research. Take it as capsules or tincture. Follow dosing carefully. It's powerful. Growing, not practical for most climates. Native to Kalahari Desert, requires very specific conditions. Buy from reputable suppliers like Mountain Rose Herbs who source sustainably. Overharvesting is a real concern. Kalahari Medicine, still fighting inflammation. That's 10 plants. Halfway through your living pharmacy. If you're realizing how much has been kept from common knowledge, this is exactly why this information matters. Hit subscribe if you want the other 10. Because numbers 17 and 20, they're worth the wait. Willow bark, Salix alba, and other willow species. Ancient Sumeria, Egypt, China. Every major civilization discovered the same thing independently. Willow bark tea kills pain and reduces fever. Hippocrates prescribed it in ancient Greece. Native Americans used it for headaches and muscle pain. Willow bark contains salicin, which your body converts to salicylic acid. That's the same active compound that became aspirin when Bayer chemically synthesized it in 1897. The difference? Willow bark delivers the compound gradually with other plant constituents that buffer your stomach. Synthetic aspirin hits faster but harder, with more gastric irritation. So why did aspirin replace willow bark? Because Bayer could patent the synthesis process. They marketed acetylsalicylic acid as a modern miracle drug and made billions. Willow bark became primitive medicine, but willow bark never stopped working. And for people who need daily pain relief without destroying their stomach lining, the original version might be gentler than the copy. Simmer fresh or dried bark for 20 minutes. The tea tastes bitter and astringent. That's how you know it's real. Growing. Zones 4 through 9. Medium invasiveness. Willows spread through root systems and dropped branches that root easily. Plant near water or low spots. Needs moisture. Any willow species works, though white willow has highest salicin content. The original aspirin, still growing by every river. Ginger, Zingiber officinal. Southeast Asia has used ginger for over 5,000 years for pain, nausea, and inflammation. Traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda both consider it essential. It crossed every ocean with traders because it worked. Ginger contains gingerols and shogaols that inhibit prostaglandin synthesis, the same inflammatory pathway that ibuprofen targets. Multiple clinical trials show ginger reduces osteoarthritis pain and muscle soreness as effectively as some NSAIDs. Studies also confirm it's one of the most effective natural remedies for nausea, from motion sickness to chemotherapy side effects. So why isn't this standard medical advice? Because ginger is cheap and unpatentable. Pharmaceutical companies develop synthetic anti-inflammatories and anti-nausea drugs they could sell at premium prices. Ginger stayed in the produce aisle where profit margins are minimal. But for chronic inflammation, especially if conventional pain relievers upset your stomach, fresh ginger might work where pills fail you. Grate fresh root into hot water. Steep 10 minutes. Drink daily. The heat and spice mean it's working. Growing. Zones 9 through 12, or indoors anywhere. Not invasive. Tropical rhizome that needs warmth and humidity. Plant grocery store ginger in pots. Harvest after 8 months. Or just keep buying it fresh. It's everywhere. 5,000-year medicine hiding in your kitchen. Pain management complete. 4 plants that handle everything from deep tissue damage to arthritis to inflammation. to chronic pain. Moving into digestive support. Plants that calm your gut and heal what's broken inside. Peppermint, Mentha piperita. Ancient Egypt cultivated peppermint specifically for digestive complaints. The Greeks and Romans served it after meals to aid digestion. They understood something modern medicine took centuries to prove. Peppermint contains menthol that relaxes the smooth muscles in your digestive tract. It reduces intestinal spasms, relieves gas, and calms nausea. Clinical trials show peppermint oil capsules significantly reduce IBS symptoms. Bloating, cramping, irregular bowel movements. Multiple studies confirm it works, as well as prescription antispasmodics for irritable bowel syndrome. If you've got chronic digestive issues that doctors can't quite fix, peppermint might be the simplest solution you've overlooked. Why isn't this the first thing gastroenterologists recommend? Because pharmaceutical companies developed expensive prescription drugs for IBS that require ongoing treatment. Peppermint oil capsules cost $5 and work just as well. Not much profit in telling people to drink tea. Fresh or dried leaves, steep strong after meals. Or take enteric-coated peppermint oil capsules for deeper digestive relief. Growing. Zones 3 through 11. High invasiveness. Peppermint spreads aggressively through runners underground. Contained beds only, or it will take over your entire garden. Any garden center. Part shade to full sun, moist soil. Ancient digestive aid. Still calming guts. Marshmallow root. Althea officinalis. Ancient Greece used marshmallow root for inflammation throughout the digestive tract. The name comes from the Greek word for healing. Medieval herbalists prescribed it for ulcers, inflamed intestines, and damaged gut lining. Marshmallow root contains up to 35% mucilage that swells into a slippery gel when mixed with water. This gel coats and protects irritated digestive tissue while the polysaccharides reduce inflammation and promote healing. Modern research shows marshmallow root helps heal gastritis, acid reflux, and inflammatory bowel conditions. It creates a protective barrier while your gut repairs itself. Why did this disappear from standard treatment? Because pharmaceutical companies developed proton pump inhibitors and H2 blockers they could patent. Drugs that suppress acid production, but don't actually heal the damaged tissue underneath. Marshmallow root does both, protects and heals. But there's no prescription pad for that. Soak the dried root in cold water overnight. The liquid becomes thick and slippery. Drink it before meals to coat your digestive tract. Growing. Zones 3 through 9. Low invasiveness. Perennial that returns from deep roots. Strictly medicinal seeds. Full sun to part shade. Consistently moist soil. Harvest roots in fall after second year. Greek healing root. Still coating and protecting. Licorice root. Glycyrrhiza glabra. Traditional Chinese medicine has used licorice root for over 4,000 years. They call it the Great Harmonizer because it treats digestive inflammation, ulcers, and respiratory conditions. Ancient Egypt found licorice root in King Tut's tomb. Licorice contains glycyrrhizin that reduces inflammation and helps heal peptic ulcers. It also has antimicrobial properties that fight H. pylori, the bacteria that causes most stomach ulcers. Clinical studies show licorice root extract heals ulcers as effectively as some prescription drugs. It also supports adrenal function and reduces cortisol breakdown, which is why stressed people crave it. But here's the caution. Long-term use of whole licorice can raise blood pressure in some people due to the glycyrrhizin content. If you have hypertension, use DGL, deglycyrrhizinated licorice, which removes that compound but keeps the healing properties. Standard medicine knows this works, but pharmaceutical ulcer drugs generate billions in recurring revenue. Licorice root gets labeled alternative, even though the science is solid. Chew DGL tablets before meals for ulcer healing, or brew the whole root as tea if your blood pressure is normal. Growing. Zones 7 through 10. Low invasiveness. Deep taproot makes it hard to eradicate once established. Mountain rose herbs or horizon herbs. Full sun. Deep, well-drained soil. Harvest roots after 3 to 4 years. 4,000-year harmonizer. Still healing ulcers. Black walnut. Juglans nigra. Native American tribes used black walnut hulls specifically for intestinal parasites. The Cherokees, Iroquois, and other nations knew the green hulls killed worms that conventional remedies couldn't touch. European settlers learned and adopted it. Black walnut hull contains juglone, a compound toxic to many parasites, fungi, and bacteria. It's particularly effective against pinworms, ringworm, and candida overgrowth. Modern herbalists still use black walnut as part of anti-parasitic protocols. The tannins also have astringent properties that help tone intestinal tissue. Why don't doctors prescribe this? Because pharmaceutical companies developed synthetic antiparasitic drugs that work faster and more aggressively. Black walnut takes longer but causes fewer side effects for mild to moderate infections. It got relegated to folk medicine, even though it's been effective for centuries. Use the green hull tincture, not the mature nut. Follow dosing carefully. Juglone is powerful, best as part of a broader anti-parasitic protocol with other herbs. Growing. Zones 4 through 9. High invasiveness in the sense that black walnut trees are allelopathic. They release juglone into soil that kills many other plants. Don't plant near gardens. But if you have space for a large tree, the hulls are valuable medicine. Trees available at native plant nurseries. Native anti-parasitic. Still eliminating what doesn't belong. Digestive support complete. 4 plants that calm, protect, heal, and cleanse your entire digestive system. Final section, immune defense. 4 plants that strengthen your body's ability to fight disease. And these last 4? This is where it gets interesting. Barberry, Berberis vulgaris. This is the plant I mentioned at the beginning. Used for over 2,000 years across Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. Ancient Egypt, traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, medieval Europe. Every major healing tradition independently discovered barberry works, and modern science finally understands why. Barberry contains berberine, one of the most researched plant compounds in modern pharmacology. Berberine has demonstrated antibacterial, antifungal, anti-inflammatory, and immune-modulating properties in hundreds of clinical studies. Here's what makes this incredible. Recent research shows berberine fights antibiotic-resistant bacteria, including MRSA. It works through mechanisms that bacteria can't easily develop resistance against. Studies also show berberine regulates blood sugar as effectively as metformin, lowers cholesterol, and supports cardiovascular health. This isn't fringe science. This is peer-reviewed research published in major medical journals. So why don't doctors prescribe berberine? Here's the truth. Big Pharma doesn't want you thinking about, berberine can't be patented. It's a natural compound that's been in the public domain for thousands of years. The global metformin market alone is worth $9 billion annually. Antibiotic resistance is driving demand for new drugs worth teens of billions. And here's a plant compound that addresses both, that anyone can grow or buy as a supplement for pennies per dose. There's no profit in telling people that. So berberine gets published in research journals that doctors don't read, while pharmaceutical companies develop slightly modified synthetic versions they can patent. The original plant gets labeled alternative medicine, but Barberry never needed their permission to work. Take berberine supplements from the root bark, or make tincture from fresh berries. The berries are also edible when cooked, tart and rich in vitamin C. Growing. Zones 3 through 8. Low to medium invasiveness depending on species. Some states restrict it because it can host wheat rust fungus, so check local regulations. Where legal, it's a hardy shrub. Rain tree nursery. Full sun to part shade. Well-drained soil. 2,000-year antibiotic. Fighting superbugs the pharmaceuticals created. Elderberry. Sambucus nigra. Hippocrates called the elder tree his medicine chest. Every part has medicinal value. Flowers for fever, berries for immune support, bark for inflammation. European folk medicine used elderberry syrup to prevent and treat colds and flu for centuries. Elderberries contain anthocyanins and flavonoids that stimulate your immune system to produce more cytokines, the proteins that coordinate your body's defense response. They also have antiviral properties that inhibit viral replication. Multiple clinical studies show elderberry extract reduces the duration and severity of influenza. Taken at the first sign of symptoms, it can cut recovery time in half. Why isn't this in every medicine cabinet? Because there's more money in treating flu symptoms with over-the-counter drugs that don't actually make you recover faster. Elderberry prevents and shortens illness. That's terrible for pharmaceutical profits. It got marketed as a folk remedy while science proved it works. Make syrup from fresh or dried berries. Cook them first. Raw elderberries are mildly toxic. Once cooked, they're safe and effective. Take daily during cold season or at first symptoms. Growing. Zones 3 through 9. Medium invasiveness. Elderberry spreads by suckers and birds planting seeds. Easy to control with pruning. Multiple varieties available at any native plant nursery. Full sun to part shade, moist soil. Prolific producer. Hippocrates medicine chest. Still preventing what pharmaceuticals only treat. Sassafras. Sassafras albidum. Native American tribes used sassafras root bark as a spring tonic and blood purifier. European colonists learned from them and shipped sassafras back to Europe as the second most valuable export from the New World after tobacco. For 300 years, sassafras tea was standard medicine. Then 1960, the FDA banned sassafras oil and products containing safrole because laboratory studies showed safrole causes liver cancer in rats when given in massive doses. And here's where this gets complicated. That ban was scientifically justified based on the rat studies. Safrole is hepatotoxic in high concentrations over long periods. But here's what didn't get discussed. The doses given to those rats were equivalent to a human drinking hundreds of cups of sassafras tea daily for years. Traditional use involves spring tonics, a few cups over a few weeks, not chronic consumption. The FDA didn't ban sassafras because traditional use was dangerous. They banned it because isolated safrole in pharmaceutical doses was dangerous, but the whole plant got prohibited. Meanwhile, Saffron naturally occurs in nutmeg, black pepper, and basil. You're consuming trace amounts every time you season food. Nobody's banning those. Was sassafras overused and commercialized in ways that became problematic? Probably. Was the complete prohibition justified by how people actually used it for 3 centuries? That's debatable. This is the only plant on this list where the FDA ban had legitimate scientific backing. But it's worth understanding what was actually being banned and why. Sassafras is still legal to grow. The prohibition is on commercial sale of saffron-containing products. You'll have to make your own decisions about risk versus traditional use. Growing. Zones 4 through 9. Medium invasiveness. Spreads by root suckers. Forms colonies. Aromatic roots, leaves, and bark. Native plant nurseries. Full sun to part shade. Well-drained acidic soil. 300-year tonic. Banned for pharmaceutical sins, not traditional use. Meadow sweet, Filipendula ulmaria. This is it. The plant I told you about at the beginning, the original source of aspirin. Ancient Druids considered meadowsweet sacred. Medieval Europe used it for pain, fever, and inflammation. It was one of the most important medicinal plants in the Western herbal tradition for over 1,000 years. Then 1897 happened. Chemists at Bayer Pharmaceutical Company isolated salicylic acid from meadowsweet, modified it chemically to create acetylsalicylic acid, and named their new drug after the plant's old Latin name, Spirea. Aspirin became one of the most profitable drugs in history. Bayer made billions. The global aspirin market is still worth over $2 billion annually. And here's what they never tell you. Meadowsweet contains the same salicylic compounds as aspirin, but it also contains tannins and mucilage that protect your stomach lining. Aspirin causes gastric bleeding in millions of people every year. Meadowsweet doesn't. The plant version is gentler, safer for long-term use, and works just as effectively for pain and inflammation. Multiple herbal medicine studies confirm this, but Bayer couldn't patent a plant that grows wild in European meadows. So they synthesized it, removed the stomach protective compounds, patented the isolated chemical, and spent the next century convincing everyone that their version was superior. Then they marketed aspirin so aggressively that meadowsweet virtually disappeared from public knowledge. Most people have never heard of it. This is how medicine got stolen and sold back to us. They took the healing plant, isolated one compound, removed the safety mechanisms nature built in, patented the dangerous version, and buried the original. But meadowsweet never stopped growing. And for anyone who needs daily anti-inflammatory pain relief without risking gastric bleeding, the original is still there. Brew the dried flowers and leaves as tea. Tastes sweet and slightly almond-like, which is why they called it meadowsweet. What you get is natural pain relief the way it was designed, with built-in protection. Growing, zones 3 through 9. Low invasiveness, perennial that grows in moist areas and along streams. Strictly medicinal seeds or horizon herbs. Part shade, consistently moist to wet soil. Flowers in summer. The original aspirin. Still growing in meadows while Bayer counts billions. That's 20. Your living pharmacy is complete. 20 medicinal plants organized into 5 sections just like a real pharmacy. First aid, calendula, sea buckthorn, comfrey, mullein, wounds, skin, tissue, breathing emergencies, respiratory, elecampane, thyme, plantain, horehound, clearing infection, opening airways, healing lung tissue, pain management, Arnica, devil's claw, willow bark, ginger, deep tissue, joints, inflammation, chronic pain. Digestive support, peppermint, marshmallow, licorice, black walnut. Calming, protecting, healing, cleansing, immune defense, barberry, elderberry, sassafras, meadowsweet. Fighting infection, preventing disease, reducing inflammation. Now you know what got buried, and who buried it, and why they did it. Not because these plants didn't work. Because they worked too well and couldn't be patented. You've just learned what your great-grandparents knew by heart, before corporations convinced everyone that real medicine only comes from pharmacies and requires prescriptions. This is your blueprint for building independence from that system, one plant at a time. Some of these you can start using today. Others take time to grow. All of them have been working for centuries and will keep working long after current pharmaceutical patents expire. The living pharmacy. It's not alternative medicine. It's the original medicine that never needed defending because it never stopped working. If this changed how you think about where real medicine comes from, subscribe for more plants they don't want you knowing about. Drop a comment telling me which one you're growing first. And if you want to dig deeper into how to actually build this system, links to growing guides and sourcing are in the description. The knowledge is yours now. What you do with it is up to you.